I bought the house for one simple reason: the creek. It wasn't big, maybe 10 feet wide and shallow in most places, but it wound through the back of my property like a silver ribbon, live with minnows, frogs, and the occasional heron. In the summer, kids from the neighborhood came to skip stones. In the fall, the water reflected golden leaves, and in the winter, the gentle trickle was often the only sound cutting through the snow. I was proud of it not just because it was beautiful, but because it was mine. The deed to the property specifically included rights to the natural waterway. My plan was to build a small deck overlooking it, maybe even a little dock for fishing. But the one thing I hadn't factored in was my neighbor, Karen. She was the president of the HOA. I quickly learned she considered every inch of the neighborhood her personal kingdom, and she hated the creek. The first time she complained, she came marching over in a sun hat and gloves, clipboard in hand. "That creek of yours," she sniffed, "is an eyesore. It lowers property values." I raised an eyebrow. "It's a natural waterway." She crossed her arms. "The HOA has standards. We prefer manicured lawns, not swampy messes." "It's not a swamp," I said firmly. "It's a creek. Been here longer than this neighborhood." "Well," she said with a smirk, "we'll see what the board has to say." That was my first taste of her obsession with control. Within a week, I had 3 violation notices: improper landscaping, standing water hazard, and non-conforming yard feature. Appealed them all, pointing out that the creek was not man-made. My lawyer sent a letter clarifying my rights to it. The fines disappeared, but Karen didn't. She doubled down. Every time I sat outside near the creek, she'd glare from her porch. When kids came over to skip rocks, she'd shoo them away like they were pests. Then came the pettiness. She reported me for mosquito breeding. She claimed frogs were too noisy. She even suggested I drain it and fill the channel with gravel to match the HOA's aesthetic. I told her no, politely at first. Then less politely, that's when she decided to take matters into her own hands. One Saturday morning, I woke up to the sound of machinery. A cement truck was idling near my backyard. I rushed outside, only to see Karen directing workers with bright orange vests as they poured cement into the mouth of my creek. "What are you doing?" I shouted. "Fixing the problem," Karen said smugly. "The HOA approved a drainage improvement project. This waterway is a nuisance. That waterway is my property." I yelled. She waved her clipboard like a badge of authority. "Not anymore. It's being filled for the good of the community. You'll thank me later." I nearly called the police right then, but I decided on something better. I pulled out my phone and filmed everything by the time the truck left. Half my creek was a gray slab of drying cement. The flow of water backed up like a clogged artery. I was furious. But I also knew something Karen did in single quotes. See, the creek didn't just run through my property. It started in the hills and wound its way down. It's cutting behind several houses, including Karen's. By blocking it, she hadn't just ruined my yard. She'd dammed up the natural flow of water. Water always finds a way. The first week, the ground around her property grew soggy. By the second, her backyard was a swamp. And by the third, her basement sump pump was working overtime as groundwater seeped in. Then came the storm. A summer thunderstorm rolled in one night, dumping inches of rain in just a few hours. My yard flooded. Yes, but the creek's natural path would have handled it if it hadn't been cemented shut. Instead, all that water rerouted itself right into Karen's foundation. By morning, her basement was 3 feet deep in murky water. Carp and minnows trapped from the creek darted around her furniture. Her washer and dryer were half submerged. Her precious storage bins floated like buoys. Her basement had literally become a fish tank. I was sipping coffee on my deck when she came storming over, hair a mess, clothes damp. "You," she screamed, "this is your fault." I raised an eyebrow. "My fault? You poured cement into my creek. Should have warned me it would flood," she snapped. I couldn't help but laugh. "Karen, it's a creek. That's literally what creeks do, carry water. You blocked it, and nature took care of the rest. You're going to pay for this damage?" she shrieked. "No," I said calmly, pulling out my phone again. "But you are." I filmed the whole thing. "You trespassed on my property, destroyed a protected waterway, and caused your own flood. I've already sent the footage to my lawyer in the county environmental agency. Her face drained of color. You wouldn't. I already did, I said. And judging by the calls you'll be getting soon, you're in a lot more trouble than just a wet basement. The county moved fast. Turns out, altering a natural waterway without permits is a serious violation. Karen was hit with fines in the tens of thousands. She was also ordered to pay for the removal of the cement and restoration of the creek. The HOA tried to back her up at first, till they realized they could be held liable for supporting her stunt. The board quickly distanced themselves, voting her out as president. As for the neighbors, well, word spread quickly about her basement aquarium. Kids teased her about keeping pet fish downstairs. One even made a sign that said Karen's catfish calf and taped it to her mailbox within 6 months. Her house was up for sale. She moved out in humiliation. Meanwhile, my creek was restored to its natural beauty. The frogs returned, the minnows swam again, and I built that deck I'd dreamed of. Neighbors started coming by to enjoy it. To this time, without Karen chasing them away, every time I hear the trickle of water in the creek, I smile. Not just because it's peaceful, but because it reminds me of a simple truth. Nature doesn't bow to clipboards and power trips. Karen thought she could control a creek with cement. In the end, she only controlled her own downfall, and while her basement may have dried out by now, I'll never forget the look on her face when she realized she'd turned her home into a fish tank justice served with a splash. Asterisk, this story is just the beginning. There is so much more ahead. Subscribe to the channel to join me on this journey.